I believe it is impossible to be right. So therefore, you have to pick which way you're going to error. Am I going to error on overestimating my costs so then I'm happy and surprised when I'm making more money than I thought I was going to? Or do I underestimate my costs and now I'm stressed out because I'm not making as much money as I thought I was going to? It's a very clear choice.
Yeah.
So acknowledge when your plans are going to fail, period, end of story. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be prepared. And then realize, well, if you're going to be wrong, because it's the most likely scenario, pick how you're going to be wrong.
Hey guys, I'm here with my great friend Zach Kimbrough, and he's going to share his journey today of being fired to becoming a food truck owner, but more importantly, the reason behind why he's doing it. Check it out. Zach.
Matt.
Welcome, man.
Thank you.
I'm excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
We've been trying to coordinate this for a minute.
Yeah.
Or two.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Dang. So I just, I wanted to open up because I just think this is such a cool story that inspires like so many entrepreneurs. We were down on the jiu-jitsu mats, which is where we met. You know, you and your wife, Jordy, came in here. It's a couple of years now, right? That you guys have
it's been
training
3 maybe.
Is it 3?
Yeah.
Dang. It just flies. Time flies.
Yep.
And you pulled me aside one day and you're like, hey man, I know you do this business thing. I just had a couple of business questions and like, hey, what's up? And you're like, well, I got fired from my job. I got about 6 months of runway until I could potentially lose my house.
Yep.
And I just love food. I love cooking it. And I have this idea for a food truck. And I was like, well, shoot, man, let's talk.
Well, it actually started years before that. And I'd always wanted to do a food truck, but it was a throwaway nothing dream. And then circumstances lined up where it's like, I think I actually should do this.
Yeah.
And then I had no idea what I was doing. And I knew you well. You taught me how to choke people, which gives a lot of trust.
And I'm okay at that. Right?
Yeah. Good teacher, good at choking people. That's a good business person, right? I don't know.
True. Yeah. No, and it was great. And I mean, and you came in with, I meet a lot of people. And this is the cool thing is, do you know how many people are not sitting here today on the podcast that have told me they want to start a business and they have all this adversity and then they just cave to the adversity and they just kind of take it and run away. And dude, you came in, you had the most ridiculously detailed spreadsheet business plan. I mean, food costs down to like the cost of a pea.
I know each fork cost me 1 penny.
Yes, like all the way down to that, and very conservative with your estimations. I mean, you came in like ready to roll.
Yeah,
with the plan and with the food. You brought it to M&E. So yeah, man, just kind of talk about that journey, like leading up to it, going through it, and where you are now. You are so busy. Your business is so busy now. You couldn't come to our event.
No,
because we wanted to have you here.
So bad. It would have been a perfect full circle. But
so take it away, man. Yeah.
Like start with how I came across the food truck idea.
Yeah. When did that first pop into your head?
Well, looking back, I in 7th grade was in home ec class, and we were making pineapple upside down cake. And my friends group, we were in groups of 4. My friends group just burnt the hell out of theirs, just completely ruined it. And I was like, all right, I got a piece too big for myself. I'll divvy this up and sell it for $5 each. Home ec teacher did not like this, called my dad, which I was kind of a troubled kid. So my dad being called by the principal wasn't too uncommon. But I just will never forget him just laughing on.
Your dad?
Oh yeah. I could hear him on the phone. Just like, this is why you're calling me. You're saying he didn't punch the bully in the face this time. He just sold some cake and he just hung up and I didn't get in any trouble.
That's gangster, man. And
then later, we were supposed to do like a final project, and I did like 5-spice Asian-inspired ribs with twice baked potatoes, and like we were supposed to just write out a recipe and do a cost analysis. I did that, but I shot an entire cooking show. That's what I ended up doing with that project. Wrote the script, wrote the recipes, modified the recipes. I didn't write those recipes, and so in hindsight, it's like it's what I've always wanted to do. I throw a birthday party for myself. I buy food to feed other people. Yes. And so it's kind of something I've always wanted to do, but I was dissuaded away from cooking because it's a hard job. You don't make a whole lot of money. And so, yeah, my parents were always like, you don't want to do that. Don't get a job in food.
So was that, back to home ec, was that always ingrained in you? Were you always just love for food, passion for food? Was there an exact moment, or was it that moment in home ec? Like, when did you know you could rock out some?
It was the 5-spice Asian ribs. Yeah,
like, I'm in 7th. I'm in 7th. Mac and cheese over here.
Yeah, I'm in 7th grade, and I just did a high quality meal, and it was delicious. It was delicious, and yeah, there's really I don't have that history that a lot of chefs have of I was in the kitchen with my grandma or any of that. I don't. It's just I
made some ribs. They kicked ass.
Yeah, I make the joke with Jordy. He's like, I'm not even sure I like to cook. I think I just like praise.
Okay.
And so I would get praise and like, all right, let's roll with this.
Let's do it. So then you're working, 22, 23, right? When we're connecting, rolling here on the mats, you're working with Meals on Wheels.
No. So when I went through 4 different jobs while I was with you guys. So I started at Energy Logic. I was a home inspector, enforcing the energy conservation code for new construction.
Yes.
I left that job to chase a paycheck. There was a little bit of broken promises during COVID that I found disrespectful, and I no longer wanted to work there. And then I also was chasing a paycheck, if we're being honest. Right. Got that job, was there 8 months. I was the project manager for a warranty department for a home builder. And I hated that job. That felt like I was working for the devil, like truly, because it was like, I won't say the name of the company so I don't get in trouble, but I'll tell you this story because I did have to sign an NDA for this. There was a house that was built without a drain for the master shower. Yep. Pretty big detail to miss. So what happens is they're living there for 3 days, taking showers in the master. The whole ceiling collapses on the living room, and it's open concept. So it's living room, dining room, kitchen, collapses onto people. And
I'm laughing, but I'm not because it doesn't surprise me.
And so I do all the work to get the quote to get it fixed. I'm not the guy who did it, so they're actually super nice to me. It's pretty rare people were mean to me in that position, surprisingly. But I get the quotes, get it all together, get the work orders put together, go to my boss for approval because it's way above what I can approve. And he says, no, you have to cut this in half. I'm like, I can't cut it in half. He's like, yes, you can. And shows me the kind of things that he would do to cut it in half. And because I was trying to get the whole ceiling redone because I didn't want any seams. He's like, nope, just the parts that fell. And when it was done, there was horrible seams. And we weren't helping people. I was guarding a company, and that's not what I wanted to do. So at that point, I got into a point of like, I can't do this job. I basically stopped working at the job. Like I just couldn't motivate myself to do it anymore. And so then I was on Indeed and just surfing through jobs. I got to find something else. And then meanwhile, all this is happening, I've been talking about wanting to do a food truck at the throwaway dream phase. And then I saw the Meals on Wheels thing, and I was like, wait a second. I hate waking up super early in the morning. I would have to be at work at 6 a.m. every single day. If I can do that for a year and enjoy that, that tells me I can go and open my own food business. I want it that bad that I can wake up this early and do it. I didn't quite make it a year. I'm sure we'll get into that story.
Yes, we will.
But I don't think I worked a single day while I was at Meals on Wheels. It was the greatest. It was so much fun.
And what were you doing there? Were you just...
I was the head chef.
Preparing meals.
Head chef. So I'd get in, the kitchen manager would tell me what we were cooking that day. I already knew, but he would go over the plan. And then I would set up a plan on when to cook it and when everything was going to get done. And with Meals on Wheels, there's like a whole assembly line of packaging that has to happen. Then it gets delivered for lunch. So it's got to be done super early. Everything's got to be super on time. It's very much that like watch the clock aspect of a kitchen, which I wanted to test myself with that stress. And then just clean the kitchen. The only thing they had to pay me to do was clean.
Okay. Now, big picture was that, did you know that was kind of going to be the stepping stone and business would come after that?
So when I left Energy Logic and then I realized I could not work in this corporate home builder environment, that's when I was like, okay, I need to start taking this food truck thing a little bit more seriously. So, and then the real like kind of epiphany moment is when I saw that Meals on Wheels job listing because it was just perfect time. It was close and it's like, okay, I'm already thinking about this. Let's just do it and use this as a test case to see if I can do it.
Okay. And then that was the time when we started having the conversation, right? Or it wasn't until you left that job.
I didn't pull you aside and ask you about anything about business until the universe forced me to take it even more seriously than I was because I had lost my job and my wife was pregnant and all that. Okay. And we had bought a 2020 Subaru Forester. So like our bills are higher than we're used to. And it's like, okay, what am I going to do?
So you've got like the American dream, right? You've got the car and the car payment. You've got the house and the house payment. Wife is pregnant. And tell us about what happened. All right. You have 2 stories, right? You were telling me before we started.
So I have a 30,000 foot view. That's kind of like my backward analysis of what happened to try to glean a lesson out of it. And then there's like the events of like, I said earlier that day, it's really that week.
Okay.
So my boss will leave him unnamed, but he was a recovered alcoholic who had basically, even though he'd recovered, had given up on life and had found a job that he could just park himself at and hang out. Paid him well enough to get his bills paid and all that. I come in, this is the 30,000 foot view, by the way. I come in earnestly. Like, I want to be in the food industry. I'm super excited to be here. This is a test case for my dream. And that energy level just didn't match. And so what ended up happening that day is we were making pizzas, and I had set up my whole station to make the pizzas. I go to get a drink of water, and I come back from that drink of water, and he's rearranging everything on the station. And I'm like, hey, I'm gonna say his name. Hey, what's going on? Is everything all right? And he's like, yeah, well, I told you got to do 2 at a time. It's like, okay, cool. Reset it. I'm sorry. It's like, yeah, you never listen to me. Could we not do this today? Because this was kind of a somewhat regular occurrence where he would come and bite my head off like that. Or like we had a kitchen assistant, Mimi. He would make her cry because he was just poor,
miserable dude.
Miserable dude, poor communicating, frustrated easily. And so he had made Mimi cry the day before, so I was already on edge. So I was like, can we not do this today? At that point, he's like, we need to go outside now. It's like, all right. So we start talking.
Was it the fight? Was it like that kind of go outside?
That was the energy I had. I don't think it was the energy he had. But I can't even remember exactly everything that was said. But the one thing I remember him saying is, Zach, we don't need to improve anything. We haven't changed anything in 10 years. Nothing needs to be changed. Meanwhile, I'm like trying to get Jordy to work her Excel spreadsheet magic to make their paperwork go from 6 hours a day to 30 minutes a day. Yeah. And like had the plan out and was trying to learn what that was. I was trying to show them that we could spend less money on the food. They're spending like $9 a plate, selling it for $6, leaning heavy on donations. I'm like, well, if we just work a little bit harder, this could actually be a profit generating thing, which nonprofit can't do that. Put it back into the world. We're doing better than we were before, and nothing needed to be improved. So here we are.
That's tough when you're in that environment.
Yeah.
Where you want to help something get better and they don't want it to get better for themselves.
So I guess real quick, back to the 30,000 foot view. I walked into a man's home. I told him I wasn't going to stay. And then I started acting like I was going to stay and take it from him. So he got self-conscious and protective and found a way to get me to get out of there because he saw me as a threat to his position, even though I wasn't.
And then they just catch you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So now you're fired.
Yep.
Pregnant wife, car payment, house payment.
Yep.
And we were at jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
You're like, what do I do?
I didn't have a plan to talk to you that day. A lot of my life isn't super planned out. It's kind of trust my instincts, go with the flow. And I'm like, well, this guy's he's been teaching me jiu-jitsu for years. I know he's a competent human being. I know he can train people. Like there's not that many people in the world that are like that or have all the traits. But it's like, hey, and he's got these businesses like, all right, let's just throw a question out there and see what sticks. And then it started a nice long conversation. And that's kind of all I remember from that. It feels forever ago, to be honest with you.
It does. It isn't, but it feels like that.
Yeah.
Because so much has gone on since then. So share the concept, like share the business as it sits today and kind of just how it started. Because I really vividly remember, I'm like, well, dude, we'll make some of that. Sounds good. Like your food can't suck. I'm like, that's the first thing. You have to have good food. You're like, no problem.
Yeah.
So bring the food out. And you brought the food out.
You guys loved it.
It was awesome. So just talk about the concept as it started when we were talking.
So as it started, I was just... So the name of the company is Mixed and Mashed, a play on mix and match. It's a build your own mashed potato bowl food truck. And it was not my idea. I was the goal was to feed drunk people food that would settle their bellies full of liquor. Cause I was sitting in a backyard with some friends drinking beer and someone mentioned it. And I was like, the person I'd never met before, I'm like, Katie, I'm stealing that idea. And she's like, I'm not going to do anything with it. It's all yours. And from there, I would just sit there and I'd smoke a little weed and just write menus. I have 500 menus written out of just different things of just like, what direction could this basic individual concept go? Like it wasn't a build your own at first. It wasn't the amount of times I accidentally wrote out a menu that was just Buffalo Wild Wings, like fried chicken and a bunch of sauces. That probably happened 200 times.
Yeah.
But yeah, eventually landed on the idea of build your own with a few signature bowls. I knew I always wanted to incorporate green chili. It's one of my favorite foods on the planet. Colorado boy, and been eating it since the womb. Been going down to Pueblo to get chilies since the womb. Yes. So that was a non-negotiable on it, and then kind of used that as an idea to build off the different sauces and stuff. And eventually 1 became 3 and 3 became 6. And the next thing you know, you're looking at a complete menu.
Yeah, and you brought a big old spread out here for the team.
Yeah. I mean, that was half the menu
Yeah,
than I have
it was.
now.
Yeah. I remember we had the bowls in the refrigerator for like weeks after that. I'm like grabbing another one of those. That was awesome. So how was that for you? I mean, was that other than family and friends? We kind of talked offline. You were sampling it, cooking it for family and friends. You came out here and like that was first official, not official.
Oh, it was nerve-wracking.
Business, right? How was that just coming into that?
Well, so I don't consider myself an entrepreneur necessarily. I feel like I'm more like an artist who gets to sell his art professionally, if that makes any sense. And so I was an anxious mess because it's very vulnerable. I'm putting my heart and soul into this food, and therefore I'm giving you my heart and my soul. Yeah. And I have no control on what you're going to do with it. I had faith for sure that you guys were going to be very kind and being very honest with me, which was what you guys were. And I appreciate that very much. But there's always that 1% of your brain. It's like, this could go really bad. This could be, Zach, your food sucks. Do not do this.
Do you think, because we talked about there's for every one Zach, there's 1,000 other people that wanted to start a business. Do you think that voice takes over and just shuts them down? Did you ever get to that point where like you almost didn't cook the food, walk through the door?
Oh, uncountable number of times.
Do the thing.
I'm still not convinced this is a good idea. Like
you're killing it, man. You've got you're too busy for all the events that want you.
I had to turn down 2 this weekend.
Look at this guy, Joey. I
have a script in my brain that's just like, what could be better? And when utilized as a tool properly, it's super helpful. But for me, it does go too far sometimes. Like Jordy says, I catastrophize, and I do catastrophize. I go straight to the worst case scenario and almost work my way back from there. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that can go and be a very unhealthy thing. And that has happened many times in this because it's that spreadsheet I showed you. One error in that spreadsheet, it could end up being a $10,000 on the year error. Yes. And I have found 100 errors in that spreadsheet. So very nerve-wracking. There was many moments where I'm like, this is stupid. You shouldn't do this. This is not what you should be doing. And then luckily I have the greatest wife in the world. And she just looks at me like, you're an idiot. Keep going.
Yeah.
So,
she's like, shut up, keep working.
Yeah.
Come on, dude.
And it's great when you have that partner who can be like, hey, you have this bad script in your brain. It's not working for you right now. Shut it down, run this. And yeah.
So do you just now notice that you have that script and run that script, and then
I've known it for a very long time.
So you've known that. Yeah. Okay. So you just knew walking into that, right? Which is that blessing and curse, right?
Yeah.
Like I have a million ideas, which is great because that's what launches the idea. But then you have squirrel syndrome.
Yep. Squirrel syndrome. And then just inherent lack of belief. Yeah. Because it's the unknown.
But. Well, and you said earlier too, you said growing up, might have been online or offline, but you were told, hey dude, don't do cooking. Yeah. That's not a good.
I think we talked about it offline.
Route for you.
I just very distinctly remembering my dad saying, hey, it's a hard life. The pay's not there. You're not going to be able to see your family. Like, it's just not a good job. You shouldn't do that. And it wasn't even from like shooting down a dream I had. It was just like in passing conversation. It wasn't in the context of me saying, I want to cook. It was just like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Hey, this path's probably not the best path. And I took that to heart. And then I remember years and years later, in college, I got a job at Chili's and I really enjoyed the environment. Like it's game time, let's go, really fed into the athlete I was my entire life. It's game time, let's go. You got to shut everything down and just let all the automatic go, but with enough attention that you could still pivot. And that's just so much fun. It's why I love jiu-jitsu so much. I love that energy. I forgot where I was going with that. And then
we were just talking about your dad and sharing those. So,
yeah.
But that was printed on you, right? So like you're carrying that.
So that's where I was going. When I was at Chili's, I remember thinking, I really want to do this. This is awesome. I'm currently studying accounting in college. I don't care. I automated all my spreadsheets to do my homework. There was no attendance grade. I wasn't going to class. I was getting good grades. I always got good grades, even though I never really applied myself in school. Like I was that annoying kid who didn't study, didn't go to class, still got an A on the test. Just because
they hated you guys, right?
They hated me.
Who was this guy?
Yeah, my AP physics teacher called me the biggest waste of brilliance he'd ever seen, to my face. That still haunts me to this day. Mr. Livingston, I don't know if you're listening to this, but I still think about you every day, every single day. Great guy, like not like a mean person at all, but it was like in sorrow he was saying it.
Okay, but because he cared for you, right? Yeah. He wasn't trying to be a jerk.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't doing the work. I didn't care. I was chasing girls. And then I wanted a family. I've always wanted a family. I come from a broken home. I wanted to mend that like multiple generational curse that we have. And I knew that if I'm not home on a Friday night, I don't get to see my kids at home on a Friday night. And that is the hardest part about the food truck is I miss my son.
Yeah. Yeah. So leading up, nervous wreck, come into M&E, crush the food. It's awesome.
The actual cooking of the food, I almost don't believe it's good still because that script in my head. But at this point, I've been focusing on learning how to cook amateur style, no training at all, for a very long time. And so it's like, I know the food's good. So I don't know why I'm nervous about it. So I wasn't surprised you guys liked it.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. But I was nervous you wouldn't, even though those things are kind of contradictory. But
no, I still get that with like speaking. I go, oh man, they're gonna hate it.
Yeah.
Right? But like I know this is good because I've done this so many times.
It's already worked.
And it's good. I still get that. Yeah, I think entrepreneurs still have a sense of that to a certain degree, whether they admit it or
I think it's healthy.
Or not. It is because you got to make sure like you got to keep it good, keep it great, make it get better.
Plus, if you're satisfied with what you're doing, where's the room to improve?
Yeah. So now I'm curious. I mean, somebody's out here listening and they want to start a food truck. Like, talk about that step by step. So you built out the plan, the business model, the numbers. I mean, you obviously need to finance that, logistically put that together. Share through that journey a little bit.
Oh, it's such a blur. So it started with just talking to food truck owners. Go to a brewery, go to a bar where there's a food truck, wait till there's a little bit of a lull in service, ask the person serving, hey, how many people do you think you're going to serve tonight? Looking at their prices, figuring out what an average cost would be, just kind of estimating. From there, it moved to sitting at breweries with 2 clickers. 1 person, 2 person, 3 people into the brewery, 1 person to the food truck. 1 person, 2 person, 10 people to the brewery, 3 to the food truck to figure out a ratio of conversion.
You're just nerding out, right? Just counting everything. I love that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my business plan ended up being like 37 pages with appendices. And no one's ever even read it besides me and Jordy. And I actually should go back and read it and see how far off I was. But that'd be interesting. But I had to prove to myself that it would work. I knew I was going to be risking my house on it. I had a kid on the way. I want to be the man that provides. I very much enjoy that role. And so I had to make sure it worked in order to bet what I needed to bet on it.
Is the paint or roof on your home or business starting to look a little shabby? If so, reach out to one of our sponsors, M&D Painting and Roofing. M&D Painting and Roofing is a full-service residential and commercial painting and roofing contractor in Northern Colorado. And full disclosure, I'm the M in M&D. Check them out at mdepainting.com. Are you a small business trying to navigate all of the landscape of digital marketing and don't know where to go? Reach out to one of our sponsors, Imprint Digital. They are the go-to source for all things digital marketing. They are the producers of this podcast, and they run all of the marketing for all of my companies. Check them out at imprint-digital.com.
And then from there, it went to Loveland's awesome. They have a small business development center. So I went there. I took a couple classes of like how to start an LLC, basic accounting, that type of stuff. I think they're like $10 to $20 each for the class. Yeah. 3 to 4 hours, not a big investment at all. Real comforting. They also have advisors you can talk to. So I got hooked up with the owner of Stuffed Burgers in Fort Collins. Talked to her for a little bit. You introduced me to Jeremy, who owns...
Jeremy's awesome. What's up, Jeremy?
Yeah, Southern Twist Foods. So talked to him on the phone a couple times.
Man. I love that guy. Yeah, we met him at the gym.
Yeah.
And I was there with Riley, and he's like, all right, big boy, you want to get big, you got to do this and do that. And,
that's funny.
And told me about the truck. He came out to our event.
Okay.
That we recently had, but he's a good dude.
Yeah.
Great food. Yeah. And loves what he does.
By random coincidence, we store our trailers at the same trailer storage. So I wave at him like every week.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I've walked over to his trailer and like looked at it and talked to him, and he's come over to mine and checked mine out. And what's really cool about the food truck world is I haven't ran into any person trying to gatekeep it. Everyone is so open and forward and kind and helpful. Like I just met this man, Dan. I've met him 3 times now. He's the owner of Misfits Pizza. He's been a chef for 28 years, tried my food, and he's like, you're going to be the best food truck next year if you just keep it going, which is a compliment that hasn't entered into the calculation at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, and he today texted me, hey, I have a date in November that I can't make. Do you want it? And just like keeps throwing business my way. And everyone's just so kind. Chris with the Taco Man, he was at my commissary my first commissary I was at. And he was just very much like, if you have any questions at all, ask. And I took advantage of that. And
Why do you think that is about that industry? Because they're not all like that.
Just a stab in the dark, because I really don't know. It's really hard. It's really hard. The hours are incredible. The labor on your body is pretty tremendous. Like, I'm sore at the end of every shift. And I think there's something about getting through and being successful in something extremely difficult that can humble you, because you know how hard it was. And if you just have a basic like for humanity, you can translate that over to being helpful, I think.
I love that. That's so cool.
That's my best guess. I don't know, but
No, but that makes sense though. So where'd you get the money to fund it? We might have talked about this.
Borrowed against my house.
Okay.
So there was a lot of series of very fortunate events that coincided to allow this to happen, that if one of them didn't happen, there's zero chance we'd be here today.
Okay.
So being able to find a house that my wife and I can afford at the time, the housing market increasing its value over the 5 years we were in there, giving us enough to borrow against. One thing, so when this started, lost my job, 6 months of savings. Jordy got a job with a 43% raise during this process.
Awesome.
So that was more than enough to cover all of our bills, which took the pressure off of it being successful immediately, which allowed me to focus on the things I needed to focus on rather than the stress of the big picture and all that.
Yeah, really cool. So talk about the first official driving that sucker out. It's set up, got your first gig. How'd that go?
May 22nd, 2024. I knew I wanted to do a soft opening. I didn't necessarily want to go all out on just random customers. Because while I was at Meals on Wheels to get my chops back up and cooking, it's not the same as short order cooking, which is what the food truck is. And so I had my processes. I had practiced it on small amounts of people, but let's actually test the process. And like in the flyer I made for people is like, let's break these processes. Let's figure out where the breaking points are. Yeah. And I was really struggling to find a spot to do it. And then I was just happened to be at a brewery, and one of the owners of Energy Logic, who I'm still very close with, just offered her mom's house and that driveway. And so I was like, okay.
That was mom's house.
Yeah, that was
where we came down.
Yeah, that was my former boss's mom's house.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
Yep. And then I'm like, all right, I want like 30 people a day. I want to make it super smooth and easy. It's going to be a couple hours. I can do 15 meals in an hour. Easy. Okay. Then she texted me saying, I've invited like 80 friends.
There's a bunch of people there.
Yeah. I ended up serving 250 meals those 2 days.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Really?
I was hoping for 60. And there was a point I just looked at Jordy. I was like, we said we wanted to do this. The universe said, all right, bet. Yep. And so here we are.
So what processes broke, or what went not according to plan?
Oh my God. Where to begin? I have a Excel spreadsheet. People listening will realize that my whole life runs on Excel spreadsheets. You have one of those? Yeah. I'm married to an Excel spreadsheet wizard. And so if I want a tool, I ask her to make it. And she's like, sweet, that's what I want to do on a Saturday morning. It's like, all right, cool. That has all my recipes, and it automatically scales out to what I estimate. And now I have some ability to put in the different proportions of meals that are made, so I can. All restaurants fail on not knowing where their money's spent. A lot of it's spent on food that goes to waste. So this whole spreadsheet's goal is to minimize as much waste as possible. And so it gets dialed in for like how much I need to make of each item and all that. First day, wildly off, completely wrong on every single component of everything. Made way too much of this, way not enough of this. Like it just
you like ran out and then had piles.
Yes.
Something else. Yeah.
Exactly. I didn't know how to set up the trailer to be as efficient as possible. I mean, I did the whole like the bear thing where I had an empty floor in my garage and I taped out where all the equipment was going to be, and I like walked around and practiced cooking in my mind. So I knew that, but then it's like I didn't account for this refrigerator door would swing this way, not that way. And so therefore there's like an extra step. There's a chance to drop something. I didn't know how I was going to store the oil from the fryers. So I had plastic buckets that were rated for 300 degrees. I would wait for the oil to cool down, and then I would start to filter through. Cold oil doesn't filter as fast as hot oil. And so that was a major time suck. Those eventually leaked, and that was like I call it the BP oil spill of 2024. It was bad. there's almost nothing I did that day that I still do. Almost nothing. My setup process is completely different. The way I put the bowls together is completely different. The way I think about the tickets is completely different. Yeah. It's just that iteration over time. Because I've served over 2,000 meals now.
Yeah. But isn't that, I mean, great advice for your kind of personality style, right? Like the overanalyzer, catastrophizer, got the plan, like no one's going to put bullets in this plan. Then it's just the plan gets shredded. Well, like the minute you execute it, that's just what happens in business.
Men plan, God laughs.
Yeah.
I've always known that phrase. And I knew that was going to happen. And so part of the plan, you talked about the real, being very conservative in my estimates. I believe it is impossible to be right. So therefore, you have to pick which way you're going to error. Am I going to error on overestimating my costs, so then I'm happy and surprised when I'm making more money than I thought I was going to? Or do I underestimate my costs and now I'm stressed out because I'm not making as much money as I thought I was going to? It's a very clear choice.
Yeah.
So acknowledge when your plans are going to fail, period, end of story. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be prepared. And then realize, well, if you're going to be wrong, because it's the most likely scenario, pick how you're going to be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. What went well or better than expected? Where you're like, dude, that's awesome.
We made it through.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I didn't want to just burn the trailer down and commit insurance fraud. Like, I enjoyed it.
Have you had one of those days yet?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say,
I've had a couple. So going to the long list of mistakes, not necessarily from the first day, but like I've had days where I drive up to a brewery and I take a different route than I normally do. Maybe take the highway and there's clover leaves that are tilted, and then I open the trailer door and there's $200 of meat just on the floor. Or days where, like when I was using the heat-rated plastic buckets, they developed a hole. So then I opened the trailer and literally a wave of used cooking oil flooded my kitchen. And so like when I got to figure out how to clean it, I have to figure out how to clean it on the fly because I'm still serving. I have to figure out, can I cook with the oil I have remaining? Do I need to send Jordy to the grocery store? Do I need to run to the grocery store because she's not available? Yeah. There's about 30 seconds of feeling bad for myself. And then it's like, all right, well, we're here. We got to just make it work.
Yeah.
And just figure it out. And there's been a lot of those.
Love that. How are you marketing the business? And I mean, how are you so busy? Because I feel like there's got to be a component. So they try the food. That's awesome. You got to go find this truck wherever it is.
Yeah.
But what are you guys intentionally doing? What's just happened?
That reaction gets me my second date at a place. It doesn't get me my first date. I just cold emailed every brewery in the state.
Awesome.
I have a list, an Excel spreadsheet, with all of the breweries, all of the bars that host food trucks, called every single one of them to verify, because some of them like listed they had food trucks, but then we're opening a kitchen, so they weren't necessarily doing that. Or there'd be a brewery that looks like it should have food trucks, but they have a non-compete with their landlord, because the landlord has a restaurant in the same complex. And so it got whittled down from there. But then at that point, cold email everybody. I use ChatGPT a ton to help me write everything I've wrote. It's a great first draft tool. It's a horrible final draft tool. Wrote it out, edited it, get Jordy approved, because she always approves everything I write, and just sent that to everybody. A little bit about me, a little bit about the food, a little bit about my goals, kind of the higher level goals of why I'm here. And then some people responded. And then at that point, people try the food and, hey, this is delicious. We want you back. Hey, we had nothing but positive feedback from all of our customers. They want you back. When are you available? And then that just starts to snowball as like a buzz gets created.
And we're only 6 months? No, 4 months in. Mm-hmm. 4 months. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how's it all coming together? Like what you estimated, say, just revenue, profitability, just overall experience, enjoyment of the business. Like how did you plan it, and what's it on trend to do?
I didn't expect to be profitable until next spring. I pulled $4,700 of profit last month.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Nice. When was your first profitable month?
June.
Okay.
My first month.
So first month.
So obviously I wasn't
awesome.
profitable in the month of May because I had a lot of bills and I didn't start until May 22nd. Mm-hmm. Now my profit was like $200 in June. It wasn't anything real. But I've been able to basically, I made $3,000 in June. My bills are about $2,600. No, I made $4,000 in June, $2,600, and then pay for food on top of that. Obviously, that's a variable expense.
Right.
I spend about $5 a bowl, a little less than $5 a bowl. July, I think I made a little over 6. And then in August, I made 9.
Top line billing.
Yeah. Just pure revenue.
And let's just keep going up.
Just pure revenue.
That's awesome.
So a big mistake I made is I was so focused in the day-to-day operation, especially during August. I mean, there were 3 weeks in August I worked 90-hour weeks. It's a huge time commitment. There's a reason why people don't do it. The time commitment's ridiculous. And unless you love it, you can't do that. So during that, I failed to look ahead. And so my September somewhat light, my October somewhat light, working on getting it filled. I got 10 more dates over this weekend. So we're getting it filled. Yeah. But I wasn't able to plan as far out as I would have liked to.
Because you were so in the business, executing, delivering the product. You're it's that pipeline.
Yeah. It's also the busy season. So that's where you're going to make your money. As school starts, it gets colder, people don't go out as much. And so the revenue will drop from there. So I don't expect to make another 9 probably until next May. But we'll be all right.
Is part of the model, would you go down to like downtown Fort Collins, get all the drunk college kids at 2 a.m? Can you do that?
So it's somewhat difficult to do that because CSU has a contract with a caterer and a non-compete because of that. Now, every once in a while they have exemptions and festivals, so I could do those. And you cannot sell on public property unless you get an event permit. Event permits are expensive. You can't do that for every single night. So the breweries or bars that have you park are either doing that illegally or have an specific exemption.
Okay, because I just remember those like food trucks would be out on the corner, like the cheesesteak sandwich guy downtown Fort Collins.
Yeah,
he's right on the corner.
I don't know. They don't give permits out to serve in Old Town, as far as I can figure out. Maybe it's a problem I haven't solved yet.
Okay, it's been a minute since I've been drinking at 2 a.m.
Yeah,
with Emily at the bar. That was rare. There might have been a couple times.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can't do that.
I don't. Yeah, it's private property is really where it's at.
So you're doing a lot of breweries. You're doing like private corporate events, or what's kind of the source of different business? Is it mostly breweries?
2 sources of revenue. I count breweries and bars together, just alcohol, feeding people who are drinking. And then I've done private events. And those private events have gone birthday to a celebration of life event to just, hey, we're having a party. And private events are the best. Less time, more intense, but also guaranteed money. It's really nice.
Really cool. And where do you want to take it? Like, what's the vision for it? What's the dream?
How far do you want to go?
Dude, go, man.
So food truck, right now it's awesome. A major cost of a food truck is you have to have a brick and mortar kitchen, so a commissary kitchen. That right now is about $1,000 a month. What I would like to do is find a commercial kitchen space, maybe build out a commercial kitchen space and build my own commissary. So now I have my kitchen and I'm taking one of my biggest costs and turning it into maybe a little bit of a revenue stream. Yes, so that would be awesome. And then one day I would like a full-on restaurant.
And then you get a couple other food truck guys, gals that are starting that can use your commissary. Love that.
Yeah. The commissaries out there they're much more catering focused rather than food truck focused. And there's small details of the kitchen that I didn't know when I was originally looking at them that really make it better for a food truck, like location of where water can be to fill it up, or location. Like my first commissary, it was a 50-yard walk to get the food to in the trailer. The new place I'm at now, it's 10 feet. It's right there. And so it's just a little bit easier that way.
That's really cool. What would you tell Zach? So when we were standing down on the mats, right, back in April, what would you tell him now that you know everything that you know and have experienced what you've experienced?
I wish it wouldn't have taken so long to get off. There was a lot of fear, a lot of days where I didn't do anything because I was just afraid and distracting myself. So I'd say don't do that, but also it's kind of a butterfly effect thing where if I'm happy now, I can't say anything to change anything. Yeah. So I almost wouldn't say anything other than like, hey, it's gonna be okay. Just on those hard days where you're about to give up, just do what I did. Keep going.
If you've got junk in your life or business that you need removed, reach out to one of our sponsors, Hulk Addicts. They are a full-service junk removal company, and they'll be able to take care of you at your home or your business to get rid of whatever you don't want. Check them out at hulkaddictsjunk.com. If you're a Christian small business owner, you have to check out one of our sponsors, the Foundry Advisory. They are a Christian peer advisory community here in Northern Colorado and the Front Range that is designed to give you encouragement, support, and insight to grow your business with other like-minded Christian business owners. Not only are they a sponsor and a partner of this podcast, but I'm also a member of their community. Check them out at thefoundryadvisory.com. Love that, man. Love that. And how's because Jordy's working in the business, right? Or is she more now with baby?
So she has a full-time job. She works from home. So she's also watching the baby while doing that. Her job's completely flexible with that and super awesome. On days where I'm home, I'm just hanging out with the baby. I will jump on my computer, do some work, go on the computer, maybe watch a YouTube video and relax a little bit because it is my day off, and I try not to burn myself out completely. Because when I go, and it just doesn't stop. Like I'll get home at 3 o'clock in the morning and start pulling reports for the day, and it's like, this is stupid. I have to be up at 6. This is stupid, but I can't help it. And then so she runs the accounting basically. She makes sure she does the scanning of the receipts and attributes them to different like cost areas, and then does all that type of stuff. And then on days where I can't get help and I need help in the truck, she'll serve.
Okay. Yeah, because she was serving when we were down at Berthoud at the event.
Yeah, so she'll be my cashier and do that. But I feel very guilty for it because she spends more time taking care of the kid than I do, because when she's working from home, she is with the baby. When I'm working, I'm just not there. Yeah. So I hate asking her for it, but I do when I have to.
Do you have employees yet, or anybody that comes in even on a contract or part-time basis just to help?
I have someone I'm paying under the table. Mm-hmm. They've worked 5 shifts for me on some of my busiest days. That is a problem. I've been so bogged down in the day-to-day. I need to figure out how to get them legit. My fear is I don't have the book of business built out yet for them to be able to quit. So it's my youngest brother-in-law. It's someone I know. I love this kid very much. I don't know that I have the business to be able to pay him enough to pay his rent and have him quit the other job yet. So that's a bit of discomfort I have in just like trying to get someone to commit to me when I'm not so sure how consistent everything's going to be. Yeah. But he's great. He does a fantastic job.
Yeah, that's always that next level, bringing somebody on, but then not being at a point where you need them. But would it ever be full-time? I mean, is that ever an advertised position? I mean, it's random hit and miss contracts whenever those contracts come up, right?
Kinda.
So you can't promise that.
Kinda. I mean, you build relationships and you get a consistent schedule. Like what I've learned over the last few months is that just kind of piecemealing days together, it's a lot of effort. And what I really want to do is I want to get reoccurring spots. So then I can lean on those. And it's not necessarily a contracted, guaranteed thing. I don't know how many people are going to be at the brewery. I don't know how many people are going to eat. But at least I'm guaranteed a spot.
You know you're going to be there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And over the last 2 weeks, I figured out ways to kind of leverage the relationships I've made into like, hey, let's maybe make this a regular thing. And it's starting to work.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Dang. What's been just the biggest surprise?
The amount of good fortune and luck I've had during all this. Like my favorite day in the food truck so far. And for those who don't know me, I was raised atheist, not necessarily Christian by any sense of the word, though I've been leaning on the philosophy of it. Like Moses, the story of Moses helped me through all this because I was lost in the desert for not 40 years, but it felt like it.
Okay.
But like I was at Berthoud Brewing, and one of my favorite breweries to go get a beer at on a regular Thursday, nothing, whatever. And they're having their 10-year anniversary party that Saturday. I arrive, I park, first day there. They've never had my food. Their truck cancels on them for their party. Hey, Zach, you want to do this party? Yes. And that was a $2,000 day.
It's a nice day, right?
It's a real nice day.
Yeah.
I made profit that day, probably $1,300.
There you go.
In a day. And so just the good luck of being in the right place, right time. The first commissary I was at, I went there and she said it was under construction. And so it was a pretty dilapidated state. I'm like, okay, it's under construction, fine. I get there, nothing's changed. It's horrible. It's dirty, disrespectful tenants. And then again at Berthoud Brewing, it's my favorite spot for so many reasons. A guy comes up with a flyer saying, hey, my daughter's opening up a commissary. I'm like, yes, please. And it's great. That's where I'm at now.
That's really cool. So you mentioned you grew up. So you mentioned previous to what you just mentioned that you grew up dysfunctional home or broken home, and then raised atheist, but now exploring Christianity. Is that kind of where you're
I
at?
find a lot of strength in the stories and the lessons therein, and almost to the point where I think the question, is God real, is almost an uninteresting question. It's to me more like, what value does this philosophy system have? to give you. And like who said it is rather irrelevant. It's much more what was said.
Okay.
If that makes
so
any
you're looking
sense.
at it more from a philosophical standpoint.
Yeah.
Than like placing your faith
but the thing is,
standpoint.
there is still an element of faith with it because I'm believing that this philosophy that's been around for a long time, that people have been working on for a long time, works.
So
Because I don't know it's going to work. I have a feeling it makes me feel good. It doesn't, but things that make you feel good aren't inherently good. So there's a faith element there.
Just because we mentioned faith, we have a lot of people come talk about their faith, whether they have it, don't have it. It's different. You know, the same as Emily and I are Jesus followers, right? But these different, you pull up to the brewing company and this event just happens to cancel. Boom, $2,000 day. Is that coincidence? Is that accident? Is that God? Is that how does that all circle together? Maybe at a deeper level for you, or maybe it doesn't.
The reason why I brought that story up is because I really wanted to tell you this. I've been thinking about this for weeks. After that day, after that Saturday, I'm in my in the dish pit doing dishes. I had so many dishes. I was there for like 2 hours. And towards the end of it, I'm drying them off, getting them put away. And I had this overwhelming sensation of wanting to say a prayer. Not something I've had since I was like 7 years old, praying for my parents to get back together type of thing. And it was, I don't know if you're real. I don't know if you're out there. I don't know if you care about us. But what I do know is if you're real, you're looking out for us and you're clearly looking out for me. So thank you. I'm going to do everything I can to make it worth your while. I don't know who I was saying it to. I don't know why I was saying it, but I was just driven to say it. And now I repeat that to myself regularly because I just try to focus on the good fortune that's happened. And whatever the source of the good fortune to me is rather irrelevant. Be thankful for the things that are happening. Don't get lost in the things that can dissuade you away from that.
Yeah. When you say irrelevant, though, wouldn't you want to know?
No.
You don't want to know? No.
Like if I was to find out, that'd be cool. It's not saying it's complete lack of interest, but it's like, where is the value contained? For me, the value is contained in the word, not necessarily the source, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so maybe one day I'll get to a point, maybe some mental block from being a militant, annoying atheist when I was a high school kid telling everyone they were wrong and stupid.
You still have that like part of you there?
Maybe there's a little bit of a block
that
this is my rationalization for it.
Right.
Because I feel like very much I'm on a journey of understanding it because I had a very juvenile understanding of it.
Yeah.
And then every single time I'm in a hard spot in my life, some flavor of Christianity drops wisdom on me. And I believe there's wisdom everywhere. I try to find it in everything from rap songs to rock songs to my kids' shows that he watches and all that type of stuff. And so I'm kind of open to that idea. But there seems to be a pretty consistent source. And I would be an idiot to not acknowledge that. Okay. And so then once I realized it, I'm like, all right, let's maybe turn in this direction a little bit and see what's up.
Checking that out.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit too, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs that I meet with come from a source, family of origin, upbringing of, struggle, strife, things like that. Do you want to get into that to any degree? Just some of the stuff that you experienced and how that's left you and fueled you and kind of imprinted you?
Yeah.
Because you've never shared that. You and I have never talked about that.
Yeah. So my dad comes from a very academic background. He himself is not academic, but his dad was a PhD in Shakespearean philosophy. His older brother is a master, holds a master's in hydrology and is like super high up in Colorado water. His sister was a PhD and MD in epidemiology. And my dad was a drug addict. I will spend the rest of my life trying to convince him that he's very intelligent because he is. He's a carpenter. The way he can do multi-digit fraction multiplication in his head, it's instantaneous. And it's like, you're a genius, but he's dyslexic. And he grew up in the 60s and 70s when that just meant you were stupid. So he was convinced he was stupid. And so that put him down that path. My mom also came from an abusive home. I don't know too much about my mom's side of the story because it was my mom that left the family. My mom left my dad, but then left me behind as well, which caused a lot of mess ups. Boys need moms and girls need dads. So bad. And so then my mom was just gone. No memories of her. And then I met her 6, 7, 8 years old, She was supposed to pick me up one day, bailed off to Wyoming, didn't tell anybody, so I just sat in the front of my house for like 10 hours waiting for her. Probably one of the worst days of my life. And then just as I got older, started to build more of a relationship. And right now we're in a spot where like me and my dad would fight, like physically fight when I was a teenager, screaming matches. I moved out when I was 16 because I just couldn't take the environment anymore. But that's the negative side. And I really and I've repaired these relationships. Like I see my mom all the time. She watches Zane. I see my dad all the time. They watch Zane.
They're still apart.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So my dad remarried when I was 4 or 5 years old. They had my sister pretty much immediately after. And my whole life I spent comparing like the difference in how we were treated, and it caused a lot of pain. But it's funny now that I have a kid, I'm like, I can't believe she was so nice to someone who wasn't her kid. Like, so the perspective there is completely shifted. And so it was rough and great, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Friends, played sports, new backpack every year for school. Like they did a really good job, but I would focus on the negativity of it. And that's where a lot of the bad feelings of how rough it was come from. Now, we weren't rich. We were in a poor neighborhood. I got beat up. I was a scrawny little kid. Didn't know how to stand up for myself. My parents put me in karate, did karate for like 4 or 5 years, built my confidence up, get used to getting punched in the face, realize it's not that bad. The fear goes away. It sucks. It's just not as bad as you think it is. But that's kind of the quick version of the family. But I really just try to focus on like, hey, look at what their situation was. I mean, when you're a kid, your parents are gods. And then as you become an adult, you realize they're fallible. And then the older you get, the more you realize it's okay that they're fallible.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that analogy, that timeline. So you mentioned too, like, hey, I want to change my family tree. Like how important is that? And
so important.
The aspects of that.
Early on when Jordy and I were still dating, I told her, it's like, hey, so if we ever get married and have kids and anything happens to our relationship, I'm buying the house next door. If the house next door is not available, I'm buying the closest house available. And we'll continue to move till I am next door. Because the absence I felt with my mom not being in my life, it only recently started to go away. I had my own kid, and that just like when you caulk a corner and it just perfectly fills those holes and it's nice and smooth, it's like, all right, we're good to go. But so that's why, like, my dad's family, my dad comes from a broken family. My mom comes from a broken family. My mom's mom comes from a broken family. It's a long line of just families not making it work and watching the trauma of how that affects people. And I don't like it. So I won't do it.
Fixing that, man. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah. And awesome. It's going well. I got very lucky meeting Jordy. She's amazing.
Where did you guys meet? You and I don't think we've ever talked about that.
Yeah. We met in college. So kind of the quick story is I'm moving into the STEM floor because I started studying chemistry before organic chemistry just beat me into submission, and I moved to accounting. But I was on the science floor. I'm moving in. There's this super charismatic, extroverted guy, Dan, who's in the band, invites me to a band party where I see this girl who immediately catches my eye. I'm like, oh, she's super cute. I need to figure out how to get to talk to her. She's already talking to another guy at the party. I don't interject myself or anything like that, but just happenstance, we just keep bumping into each other. And then one day we're coming back from like a group hangout or whatever, and she starts teasing me that I haven't asked her out yet. So I'm like, all right, hint taken, ask her out, go on a date. Date was like 9 hours long. We just hung out in the back of her truck, looking at the stars, talking all night long. She got back to her dorm room. Her roommate had a guest over, so she had nowhere to sleep. Came over back to my dorm, and we woke up and watched Broncos football the next Sunday, that Sunday morning. And
it's a killer first date. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it was just kind of like, this is cool. This is fun. I went to college not wanting a girlfriend at all.
Right. Did you know when you met her that she was the one?
No.
Did it take time? You didn't know? So it wasn't like after that first date?
I know I really, really liked her, but I was always hesitant on like the committal of she's the one.
Okay.
Now that changed pretty quickly.
Okay.
Just because I was at that point dealing with a lot of the trauma left over from, I wasn't quite as healed as I am now from everything from my childhood. So I was a bit of a handful. Like we were talking about Beauty and the Beast today, and I'm definitely the beast. That eventually got tamed and became the prince, but I was definitely the beast at the time. And just the amount of care she just kept giving me, I'm like, this is one, I try to throw it away because I don't deserve it. I've never got this. I don't know what it is. Go away. And she's like, no, just call me like, no, I'm staying.
Love that.
So, and then eventually you're just like, oh my God, I can't you're my guardian angel. I don't know what you saved me from at this point. It's amazing.
Well, I think two things for men that have been through trauma, because I've been through trauma, is like you have to have that woman that will stand by your side when you're just a hot mess, just a shitty wreck.
Yeah.
Right? It's huge.
When
and
you're
then
really
dealing with your stuff.
Yep.
Like, what did you do to deal with your stuff? Because at first we don't realize it. And for me, Emily's like, Matt, you got some stuff like right there. You got to deal with that. I don't know how it was for you.
Well, I started by drinking very heavily.
Yes.
I started drinking when I was 15 years old.
That helps for a minute, right?
It does until it doesn't. And I kind of had like a forced epiphany. So I don't talk about the story very much, but I'll talk about it here. I had just turned 21, doing what I do every night, whiskey, beer, let's go. Every single night. It's crazy. But let me take a step back. My whole life I've suffered with suicidal ideations. My whole life. And it's all just an extent of not feeling worthy enough to be here because my mom left. And I think moms give little boys self-worth. It's their first love. I didn't get to have my first love. That's kind of the way I look at it. Yep. And so what ended up happening is I got extraordinarily drunk that night, had a little bit of an embarrassing moment, which would usually cue a suicidal ideation. And in hindsight, not doing what I'm supposed to do also cues it. It's like a stress response. And then the suicidal ideation became real because I was so drunk to not keep it in my head. So I wake up in a hospital in the drunk tank. I had slit my wrists.
Shit.
Yeah. Woke up in the drunk tank. Weird, like God might be real moment. The door was unlocked. I escaped. And then I had a moment of like, I'm here. You're supposed to be here. And I went back in and I locked the door on myself.
In the drunk tank.
In the drunk tank.
Okay.
And then what happens if you go to the hospital with an occurrence like that is you get put on what's called an M1 hold. So I was put in a psych ward for 3 days. And in that psych ward, I just sat there and was like, how did we get here? This is not where we're supposed to be at all. So I just sat in the corner for 3 days and just kind of stared out the window at a tree and was just thinking about what I was doing, what behavior I was like, what cycles was I stuck in? Why do I think I got here? And then the hard part is when you wake up and you're in the gutter, you're still in the gutter. And so then it was a long process of kind of starting to trust the people around me that one, I was worth it and I didn't have to have these behaviors, but then also like the forgiveness they would give me when I would fall back into my old ways. And it was just a constant process of stand up, fall, stand up, fall, stand up, fall, and just trying to make the gap between falls bigger and bigger and bigger. And that was the goal.
Man, well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. You're
all full of surprises today, man.
It's
like,
a lot.
Dang.
Yeah. Jordy says I'm unboxable.
Man. So somebody that's in that place where you were, having those kind of thoughts, thinking about doing that. I mean, what would you say to them or go back and say to your previous self?
I would say when you get into those moods, when you recover from them, because you can't do it when you're in it, especially not at first, you have to take a step back after it's done, fully look at the wreckage you left behind instead of just like, you can ignore it and just keep going and nothing will happen. You have to sit and stare that evil that you left in the world in the face. You have to. You have to understand that was you did it, and then you have to ask why. You have to take a step back from yourself. What happened over the last 3 days that got me to this emotional state where this happened? And for that specific moment, I was not doing my schoolwork. It wasn't working like it had worked in the past where I didn't have to do my schoolwork and I was succeeding. It wasn't working anymore. So I had no idea what to do in the future. I had an embarrassing moment. I'm very sensitive to embarrassment. Just naturally, I don't know why. And so just look at the things that cause you to get to that spot and try to find early warning signals. Try to find the trip and set tripwires before you get there. Yeah. And then forgive yourself when you trip them because you're going to. You're just going to. Yeah.
Damn, I feel like we could have a whole nother episode
just on that.
Just on this.
Yeah. I've thought about this a lot because it's like the stuff I saw while I was in the mental ward, there was a guy, he was my roommate. He would just sit on his bed the whole night just talking about how he killed his wife. He didn't. I asked the orderlies. He didn't, but he has delusion in his head that that's what he did. Then I watched two psychotics talking to each other and it's just unintelligible conversation, but they were both fully involved. And I'm like, okay, so I'm not crazy because I'm not this, but I'm here. Something got me here. Let's figure it out.
Damn. Well, dude, thank you for sharing that, man. Yeah. I know that takes a moment of trust and just vulnerability. And you mentioned, dude, Joey, like this guy's a rock star. You came in here, you're like, I'm a little nervous. Never done one of these. And you just crushed it, man.
Well, I appreciate
This
that.
is awesome.
You
Thanks
crushed,
for
bro.
sharing.
I appreciate that.
You
Thank you.
absolutely crushed it.
And not just saying that. Like we have
for real.
people in here that don't crush it. And you crushed it.
I love conversation. I mean, one of my favorite things to do, a big reason I'm with the food truck is because I just like to drink beer and talk to people.
Yeah.
And so,
And you get to make money doing it and change your family tree. Dude,
Yep.
good on you, man. And there is a God that loves you. So keep exploring that. I'll just leave you with that, man.
he keeps trying to tell me. It seems like if he's up there, he's trying to tell me.
He is. There's no way you went through what you went through in those moments, and he wasn't there, in my opinion. And I'll just leave it at that. Dude, what do you got on your card, man?
So we didn't get into it. I have a big philosophy of why, kind of a large overarching thing, why I want to do the food truck. Americans don't eat food. A lot of us eat food-like products. And so what I wrote on here is just eat real food. I want to serve real food to good people at a reasonable price. I call it level 1 health food because compared to hot Cheetos, there's no nonsense in my food. It's all homemade. It's all real food. I don't cure my bacon. I don't make the dry noodles for the mac and cheese. I do use a little Velveeta in the mac and cheese. Everything else is homemade from scratch every single time. And it's because if you eat real food, you feel better. You treat people better. You're stronger. You're more capable. You can love more. When you have the fuel you need, you're a better person. And so eat real food.
Zach Kimbrough, that's a wrap.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, man. Hey, thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Would you make sure to please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel here? And please share this episode with somebody whose life it will make better. Are you a faith-based father and you want to have the adventure of a lifetime with your son? You have to check out the father-son hike of a lifetime on the Camino de Santiago in Spain. June of 2025, I'm going to be taking a small group of fathers and sons over to Spain. We are going to spend 6 days, hike 70 miles, have some of Spain's most amazing cuisines, see some of the most beautiful places and spaces, but most importantly, spend time together bonding with our sons. If you're interested in this adventure, check out mattshoup.com. When you get to the website, click the Gentle Art of Leadership button and hover down to the father-son hike of a lifetime.